NASCAR says no to private equity for charters. The teams might not participate in the Netflix documentary. And we're going to talk about the option tire at Richmond. Let's get into it. Coming up next. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, we got a race this weekend, so let's talk about Richmond and its tires. First off, it might rain at Richmond, so we might get to see the damp weather compound tire make a return to the track because, of course, if NASCAR's in town, we're going to have some rain. But I'm not here to talk about the rain tire. In fact, I'm here to talk about the option tire because, as some of you might have forgot or might remember, NASCAR is going to do the option tire here at Richmond, where teams will have 6 sets of standard tires and they will have 2 sets of the option tire and, of course, 1 set of scuffs. Now, I'm not sure if the scuff set can be an option tire or not, so where you would maybe have 3 sets or 2, but we know for sure that they'll have at least 2 sets. So 2 sets of the option tire are going to be interesting because NASCAR has not mandated whether or not you have to run them. NASCAR was real specific on how you had to run them at other tracks. So it looks like NASCAR has finally said hands off. You run what you want to run, do what you want to do on this particular deal. So I think that's going to be good. Hopefully it leads to a really good Richmond race. Richmond used to put on some of the best races back in the day. So hopefully this option tire gives the teams that added bonus or whatever they need for the short track package on this particular car to make Richmond be a fun track to watch races at again. Of note also, the teams will have a 45-minute practice, so they will be able to test the option tire, so we'll see how much fall off it has, how much faster it is than the regular tire, and what kind of benefits. So will the team save both sets for the end of the race, or will they start off on a set and then save 1 set for the end of the race, and then in the middle of the race sort of adjust to the regular tire? It'll be interesting. All kinds of strategies, I'm sure, will happen from this deal. And you still can't mix the tires. You can't do one like softs on the right, hard on the left, so you still can't do that though. This from Adam Stern: new rules that NASCAR has included in charter drafts around private equity include a prospective ban on sovereign wealth funds, which would prevent the likes of Saudi Arabia's public investment fund from investing in teams for the duration of the deal. Okay, so that begs the question, what is private equity? Private equity is basically when a company goes and talks to really wealthy clients, and just for example, they'll say, hey, this client right here, I'll give you $5 million, and I have goals to achieve this, that, or each investor has different goals. So from there, the private equity fund will now go and look at businesses where they will buy private stock to increase and meet the goals of the investors. And I say private stock because typically these companies buy into companies that are not traded on the public market. It's not stock like you could buy on the stock market. That is called public. That is a public company. They go and buy stock in private companies that wouldn't otherwise offer stock to the general public. Like a regular person like me or you couldn't just walk up and say, hey, I want to buy into this. But they will sell it to these private equity firms. And in return, these private equity firms will have some say-so in the day-to-day operations of that particular business because they are trying to elevate that business to get to these goals for their investors, like we just mentioned earlier. And the reason this is important is because recently private equity firms have been buying into sports teams because sports teams, in their opinion, are recession-proof. In fact, every time you hear about a sports team and the sports team being sold, every time the sports team is sold for way more money than the sports team was bought for. So they're looking at these particular investments with a keen eye, and they have been buying into them. Most notable of these firms is Arctos Partners. Arctos has been approved to invest in multiple teams by the NBA, MLB, NHL, MLS, global motorsports organizations, European soccer federations. Arctos currently owns stakes in the Golden State Warriors, Philadelphia 76ers, Chicago Cubs, Boston Red Sox, New Jersey Devils, and Real Salt Lake. And you see at the bottom there, that is from Fortune.com, and they have spent, this particular group itself has spent $1.2 trillion in buying into sports teams because they see them as a positive investment. Like I said, their clientele is a different clientele. They go after rich people, and the rich people put their money in. So what makes Arctos different from the specific group that basically NASCAR wants to keep out? NASCAR is basically doing this to keep the Saudis out, because Saudi Arabia's is a public investment fund, meaning a sovereign investment fund, meaning it is run by the state. So in their particular case, it's not a bunch of just rich, different investors. It is a state. So NASCAR would have to deal with a state. And this is just my opinion. The reason NASCAR doesn't want to deal with that is twofold. You already saw what happened with the PGA and the Live Golf thing. That is part of the Saudi deal. NASCAR doesn't want a split to happen like that. And part of the reason NASCAR doesn't want a split to happen like that is if one of these Saudi firms got involved in a NASCAR Cup team, they've got basically, I don't know a better way to put this, they've got FU money. They've got more money than NASCAR has, so they could wait out NASCAR if a situation like that arose. And not only that, but they could trickle into other teams and keep them floating too, because their resources are just way more vast than probably just about any other investment firm I can think of off the top of my head. So yeah, not a story I necessarily had on my bingo board for 2024, but an interesting story nonetheless. That NASCAR is basically like, yeah, we don't want to mess with people that have not only state connections, but we don't want to mess with people that have more money than NASCAR itself. So it was a pretty interesting story in my opinion. Speaking of charter agreements, once again from Adam Stern, some NASCAR teams are weighing whether to decline to participate in the second Netflix documentary if a charter deal isn't in place by the playoffs. And you can see there, NASCAR spent over $5 million on the docuseries last year and has greenlit funding for another one. So there you go, NASCAR has greenlit another documentary series for Netflix, and the teams, to their credit, are saying, hey, you know what, if we don't have a charter deal, we're not going to participate. So they're trying to do whatever they can do to put some pressure on NASCAR. So from the team's perspective, this is good. It gives them a little bit of a bargaining leveraging chip, because guess what? They can go up to NASCAR and say, hey, you know what? You can have all the documentaries you want to, but none of the teams that are actually in the playoffs are going to participate in it. So that would be one angle that they could move from. And it does put NASCAR, it does put pressure on NASCAR, because like I said, like that article said, they have, given $5 million to make this thing happen. So it'll be a $5 million flop in NASCAR's lap. So hopefully this is the play that works out, that we do finally get a deal done, everything comes together, and we move on. We don't have to talk about charters anymore. But of course, it is not all positive news, because the NASCAR documentary series on Netflix was really well received, and I think a lot of people really liked it. So it does hurt the fans. Once again, whenever you have labor negotiations and stuff like that, the teams usually end up coming out okay. NASCAR is probably going to end up coming out okay. The tracks are going to end up coming out okay. But who is going to suffer is probably going to be the fans. Even if you take it all the way and we have a strike or a split or anything, the only people that actually suffer in the end are the fans. So hopefully none of that comes about. But as good as it is as a bargaining chip, if the teams don't participate in the documentary and we get a lesser documentary or no documentary at all, the fans are once again who suffers. Another super positive and uplifting video about NASCAR. Dear God, please let the race happen this weekend, and please let it be great. But that's all I got for you on this one. If you made it this far, I would love to have your subscription. If not, I'll just keep making these things. If you got a question, comment, or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section. I try to get to as many of them as I can when YouTube actually shows them to me. There was a glitch where I couldn't see a bunch of them the other day, so apologies for that. And yeah, if you want to help out the channel, visit the merch store. Links in the description. Other than that, thanks for your time. Peace.